Welcome to the Black Paper. My name is Ndukwe Onoha.
And I'm Chetawanze.
Man, do you know
The reason I'm
it's
laughing is that you were doing that countdown
that
thing with your
that
fingers
BBC?
when the and I just remember that BBC.
Oh my goodness, that has to be one of the funniest things. Something that should have just been funny. Everyone should have laughed about it, and somebody wanted to treat him mountain. But anyway, people will always look for a reason to be upset. Um,
Yes.
the other thing is quite interesting. You know, the other day I sat down and I said to myself, "Hang on, January is not yet over, and we've had an eventful 2026."
But should be 2 episodes ago, I showed you that stuff that I saw on social media about George Orwell reading the 2020, as in reading 2026 with such horror on his face.
It's amazing. So, but anyway, two two interesting topics, or three interesting topics we want to talk about today. We want to look at Sudan, what's going on there. We want to look at the latest defection for now, as at today,
You
anyway.
want to look at Sudan, the usual nonsense that happens in this place where you will say something and I'll say no, and then Madam Producer will overrule me, has happened again. See, democracy sucks.
Which is why we're talking about Sudan. You know, to look at is the democratic system of Sudan that is being used.
Democracy
Uh,
sucks. Good old-fashioned military dictatorship where I have my way and you don't have yours. Where
I see someone who's been inspired by Trump.
yes,
Uh, Daddy Trump. But so we also want to look at the new policing white paper, and finally look at, depending on the order in which we go about it, look at the defection of Suella Braverman. Some will say the homecoming, because she was always meant for reform. But Cheta, where do you want to start from?
I'm sulking, so I'll leave it to you.
Right. So should we get the fun stuff out of the way first?
Now you know, I'm still sulking.
Yeah. Okay, let's look at let's look at Braverman. It's always fun to look at this guy. So 2 days ago, or was it yesterday? My goodness, this whole thing just happens. And yeah, it was yesterday. Yesterday we
You're
woke
getting
up.
old.
I know. Woke up again or not woke up, but hit again with the fact that there's been yet another conservative, surprise, surprise, who has moved to reform. Now, at this rate, what we have is the Boris era conservatives who have looked
It's
around
actually
and said, you know what, it's time to go home, and home is reform.
it's actually very interesting. It's almost his I think with the exception of Rishi Sunak now and Kemi Badenoch, it's almost his entire cabinet that is now in reform. So you have his former chancellor Zahawi, you have the community secretary Robert Jerick that we talked about last week. You have
Yeah, okay, well then, yeah, sorry, never mind.
yeah, you have Nadine Dorries, the former culture secretary. She's a football hooligan, Abi. I don't want to lie better anybody, but somebody
No,
described her as that once.
what we know is that she's a Boris uh, top
Groupie.
fan, as groupie, as in,
Okay.
if you want her to just start, just mention Boris, and she's weak in the knees.
Okay. We have Kruger, he's a political secretary. We have his skill ministers. You see Robert Jenkins, I've forgotten his first name. We have the powerhouse minister, Berry. We have the health minister, Caulfield. I always think of cauliflower whenever I hear that one's name. You have the private parliamentary secretary, I forget the name now. You have the assistant whip, who is named, that's Holloway. She's Holloway, named after a school. You have
There are too many. There are over 20.
you have the Scottish minister, and then now you have Suella Braverman. So essentially, reform has gone. I think the ironic thing or the interesting thing is that it's very, very similar to what we call political prostitution in Nigeria. This whole cross carpet when it's convenient for you. I think it's ironic that the UK media is treating it as a crisis for the Conservatives, because in my view it's not. I think it's giving an opportunity for Kemi to remake the Conservatives in her own image, and for the more moderate people in the Conservative Party to actually um
Rise or
no,
shine?
rise is not the words, to actually take their party back, because the Conservative Party traditionally was right of center. What's happened over the last couple of years is that remember when I talked about Overton window? So basically, these people pulled to the right, pulled the entire party to the right. So pulled it in direction of more xenophobia and all of that good stuff. So again, I still stand by my analysis that unless Keir Starmer loses his nerve
And
and
calls.
calls a general election and all of that stuff, reform will ultimately lose. And the fact that he's gathering all these what he once called failed stories, that's Farage. And I mean, there was I saw a tweet. I was on a train, so I saw it in passing. I saw a tweet where someone showed Zia Yusuf calling Braverman and Jenrick specifically. This was in July last year, calling them some really choice names. Now they're all in the same party.
Oh, no, you know, as you see, there's always one tweet.
It's not this was so this wasn't even a Zia Yusuf tweet. The tweet was a video of him. So it was a video of him calling them choice names. And as we know from our own homeland, for those of you from Nigeria, when you gather too many field politicians I won't call too many strange bedfellows ahead. That's the better expression. Why gather too many strange bedfellows under one tent? See, katakata must dey, yawa must gas. There's no going around it. Now, I like to believe, because in Nigeria, for example, the gathering of strange bedfellows managed to win power in 2015 and have contrived to wreck the country. So I like to think that the British system will look at this gathering of strange bedfellows and say, no, here you go and no further. And I've been at pains to keep stressing it. That's here you go and no further is going to happen sometime next year, sometime in 2027. I think that the more important story is one that I'm sure you will not want to talk about, which is your party also behaving like a Nigerian party.
Yeah.
The Keir Starmer being so scared of a challenge by the mayor of Manchester and the Burnham, and because of that blocking him from becoming a member of parliament, or from running for a member of MP for this thing. I mean, this is, and the way that your Labour Party executive behaved in this is just it just reminds me of a rubber stamp in Excelsis that we have back in Nigeria. I think they just rubber stamped Keir Starmer's wishes. Tell us what's happening here.
Okay, so first of all, it's just going to reform. It's
no, I don't want to go to reform. I want to stay.
No, I'll come to Labour, because I should have known that you would go there. But anyway, starting from reform, what you said about Conservatives running scared, I think they still are running scared, and they still for a long time will continue to wander in the dark. And this is why the rise of Kemi was really, she rose on the strength of culture wars. And when you look at her performance in PMQs, Prime Minister's Questions, it's been improving. However, her biggest strengths have been when she sticks to that culture war. But when there's no culture war, when there's only facts and details to be addressed, she flounders, like the last PMQs, where she had an opportunity to not try and be on the side of Trump against the UK, even if for just for 1 week. But
Let me
and she
interrupt you
couldn't help
in that.
herself.
Let me interrupt you in
Mm-hmm.
that respect. Mhm.
Mm.
So I think that so Trump is kryptonite. I mean, you see that even Starmer is always very careful when talking about the Trump thing. He's always very his language, the way he behaves. At the end of the day, a fact that Trump has made very clear is that not just the UK but Europe generally are vassal states to the United States.
Of course.
And
And what people like, sorry, and what people like Kemia, and this is why I'm also going to go back to her.
she's
Reform?
just your favorite whipping boy.
No. What they have in common is that they are determined to see how lower the UK can go in that in being that vassal state. Yes, Kestama tries to play that, don't be nice to him, say anything, don't say anything that might upset him, and maybe he'll behave. Never works. Trump is just a madman. However, you see a deliberate tying of in the series, Yes, Minister. One of the civil servants says, you want to tie ministers' trousers to the mast so that way they can't climb down from a position once they've taken it. And that is what Kemi and Farage seem to do. I mean, look at Farage, unwilling and unable to call out Trump over uh, trying to set more tariffs on UK, EU countries for standing against his decision to invade Denmark if he ever wants to, or Kemi then saying, "No, Trump has said this about the Chagos Islands," but I know I digress into Kemi. What I wanted to say initially was because she got to power on the strength of culture wars, and what Farage has done now is to take away every so-called culture warrior in her midst. Sadly, Kemi is left with. Question is, will the real Kemi stand up now? So there's still going to be that. There's still going to be a lot of months in which they find themselves. However, for reform, I do believe that reform is a special purpose vehicle for Boris Johnson, who has somehow passported all his ministers, or most of his important ministers anyway, into reform as a placeholder. What we're going to start seeing, and I agree with you, from middle of next year, or middle of the year rather, it will get interesting in reform. Boris's ministers will start being more vocal in Farage's reform, and everybody knows that Farage does not like anything other than a one-man show. They're going to go head to head because now you're going to have people with experience, people who know how to handle the media, and they're, and people who know how to go toe to toe with Farage when it comes to trying to be the shiny new toy in the pram. So it's going to be interesting, and I see there's going to be the main Conservative Party, but then Reform will be the Conservative 2.0, and that might be what brings them back again after they've destroyed, and maybe that's just a reach, but after they've destroyed Reform from within, perhaps the Conservative Party will say, well, okay, you know what, let's try and balance out, because people will go to parties like Advance and other far-right parties because they would have no time for reform.
I don't necessarily agree with the thrust of your argument. I think what's going to happen to the rights of UK politics for a while to come is fragmentation. However, I think it's important to point out that this fragmentation is also happening, although slower, on the left. Basically, the first principles that built Western politics, the current Western political thoughts, I think, are free. The consensus is that built the Western political system. They're fraying, and we're in the middle of. So I would borrow the words of the Canadian Prime Minister. We're in the middle of a rupture, not a transition. So by the time, so as an example, when you say rights of politics, it usually means socially and fiscally
Conservative,
conservative.
yeah.
Mhm. When you say left of politics, it usually means socially and fiscally liberal. And then every other thing is on the spectrum between both. Then, of course, there are the extremes that are beyond both. Now, what has happened is that there's a group of people rising. So take me as an example. I am socially conservative, but not fiscally conservative. Where do you place me? Do you understand? Mhm. Now,
Lead them, I think.
not really, but socially conservative again. I'm not socially conservative in the European style. I don't know if that's in the right or far right style of current European politics. So, for example, I am not the one nation blood and soil kind of person, which is the extreme of conservatism. You understand? It's just I don't. So, for example, I tend to believe that a lot of the old ways in terms of habits could are safer. I think that's a better word. But ironically, again, because again, I think one of the beauties of this particular association is that both me and you are Igbo, so we can actually identify with a lot of the things historically. So I don't, even though I am socially conservative, I don't fully buy into culture being the idea of culture being static. I don't. So a very good example is the fact that as Igbo guys, I'm a twin. If I was born 100 years before when I was born, I would have been killed at birth or abandoned to die. You understand? So that gives me a very nuanced view on culture being static, because when the first there's this historical misnomer that it was some lady called Mary Slessor who came and stopped the killing of twins in what is now southeast and south Nigeria. She was not the first. The Obong of Calabar, Obong A Your Honesty, banned the killing of twins 30 years before Mary Slessor came around. And when he bans the killing of twins in his in his domain, there was a lot of resistance. People were like, "It's our culture." And many times that I have thought about it, because so in Igbo we have something that we say. Basically, there's an Igbo proverb that basically translates to when an abomination stays for more than a year, it becomes culture. So basically, I think that the practice of killing of twins came as a result of something that happened in the Benin Empire about 600 years ago, when Oba Ozolwa, I think, had twin sons, Esige and Aroa, and the mother refused to say who was the older son.
Well,
and
sorry, because and this is a good place to plug the work we're doing on Queen Idia, because we're actually working on this story and making a theatrical
I'm
thing
not
of the
going to let you
series.
plug, because the last time
So,
you did this, you didn't give me a free ticket. So I'm not going to let you plug.
so no, but it wasn't twins anyway. They were mothers by two different women. But yes, as you were alluding to there, whichever child cries first is the first. So it was a cry that determined ascendancy to the throne, or whoever was going to be the crown prince.
I would have to cross-check my opinion, because my history tells me that they were twins. The mother refused to say who was first, and anyway. Bottom line is that Esige and Aroran fought a civil war, and it was a very bloody civil war.
Bloody civil war.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so. There's a lot of the peoples in what is now south and southeast Nigeria trace some sort of suzerainty to Benin, not necessarily ancestry, but that at one point or the other they had links. Either the Benin conquered them, or they had and even up to the southwest. So
Oh yeah,
because
because the link between Ife, Ile-Ife, Benin, they're always arguing who came first, it's quite.
all of that stuff.
I'm sorry, Ocheta, but
Yeah.
things like this, because one of the biggest issues, because you've touched on something that I just sort of like skimmed over it, but when you don't look at your history, when you don't talk about your history, you then don't give credence to the Obong of Calabar. Rather, you say it was Mary Slessor that stopped the killing of twins. when you don't give birth to, or when you don't give credence to your history, you look at people, you look at the dressing of the Benin people, for instance. Look at the dressing of the Onitsha people. You're saying to yourself, yeah, but these people, this one is Igbo, the other is Benin. Why on earth do they, if they were not to open their mouth, you would almost swear that they were one and the same people, if all you were doing was just look at their fashion, and even some of, like, in the swords that they carry. But the reluctance, or it's not even reluctance, but that
Refusal is a better word.
the refusal to teach history is what today then plays out when you see someone say, "Oh, I am Igbo, I'm Yoruba, I'm Hausa." There's nothing similar amongst us, and it's madness, because only 200, 300 years before, you could tell that, we're cousins. You could tell that there's that line that runs, But again, I digress. Sorry, but it's just that you touched on something, but not everyone has that much insight about these issues like you, and I just thought we should uh, point it out or spell it out. There's more that connects us than we've been led to believe divides us.
Agreed. So now I've completely lost the train of what I was talking about, what led to this. But the bottom line is that dragging it back to what we're talking about, which is the what is a danger, or where the UK is at danger of going in terms of political culture. The UK has to punish charlatans. Simple and short. It is exactly this kind of politics of charlatans that led to countries like Nigeria being where they are. And when you enter that route, I mean, think of, for example, what's happening in the US in Minnesota and all of that stuff. When you enter that route, it's very difficult to come back from it. It's important to put a halt to that slide before it goes too far.
And I'm just looking at the text. I've been told that if I don't address your subtle remarks about Andy Burnham, you're probably going to put the producer on the hot seat, and then add it again to yet another baseless accusation that there is some form of bias. So let me.
There is bias. The producer is biased towards you. I'm not implying it. I'm saying it with my full chest.
But anyway, but okay. So what was the background? The background is that Andy Burnham, for a very long time, has been making sounds about wanting to go back to Parliament.
Perhaps you want to say who Andy Burnham is first.
Yeah, and Andy Burnham is the mayor of Manchester. Of
Greater Manchester.
Greater Manchester. He's Greater Manchester, yeah. He's mayor of Greater Manchester, and he enjoys widespread support amongst Labour supporters.
And he used to be a member of Parliament.
Yeah. So I said that earlier. He wants to go back to Parliament. He enjoys widespread support amongst party faithful. Now, in the turmoil that, or the conversations around how Labour has been governing since 2024, and the Burnham has managed to insert himself unofficially, I must say, in conversations around whether he will be a Labour leader. Now, the thing is, you can't be prime minister if you're not a member of parliament. So in the past few weeks, again, people have been saying Burnham should stand for parliament. In fact, one of the MPs, Clive Lewis, I don't remember which constituency is an MP for, had even said that he would be happy to step down for Andy Burnham. Well, Andy Burnham didn't have to wait long, because the MP for Gorton and Denton had to step down because of health concerns, and this seemed like it was a ready seat for Andy Burnham. Now, as mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham won every ward. So he didn't just win with a majority, won every single ward in Greater Manchester. So it
So
looks
to use Nigerian political terms, he's a table shaker.
it is a table shaker. He delivered his word and polling units. But so it seems like, look, if he was a shoo-in for the position. However, being a mayor, before you can become or before you can stand to, for parliament, you have to get permission from the National Executive Committee.
Neck.
Which neck? This is giving PDP vibes. You have to get permission from the neck to stand for parliament if you're a mayor. And this then, of course, was where as you say in Nigeria, if you're playing Ludo, the Siki, they had him in Siki 6 because the neck is filled by those who are largely in support of
Kestama
Keir Starmer.
loyalists.
So, so
Use the correct expression. Kestama loyalists.
yeah, Keir Starmer, no.
Shouldn't be hard for you.
No, yeah, but I said those who are supporters of Keir Starmer, so Keir Starmer loyalists. But the thing is, Cheta, let's be honest, it was anticipated because if you see somebody, it's like I said to someone yesterday. So think of when you were a strapping young lad. You see one girl that you like down your streets. Let's say you live on number 2. No, down number 7, there's another young man that also has an interest in that lady, and you have an opportunity to maybe, as a man goes into his compound to get something, you lock the gate so that he doesn't come out, and you can go meet the object of your affection. That is what happened. You can't expect to be, in real politics. It would have been naive for Keir Starmer to allow Andy Burnham to get into
No.
parliament, knowing that he was
So
coming
let me
for his
pause you
seat.
there. Yeah, let me pause you there. I agree with what you've said.
Mm.
It's so Keir Starmer was faced with 2 bad choices. If so, for Andy Burnham to run for that Denton by-election, it would mean him leaving the mayoralty of Manchester, of Greater Manchester, and then they having to organize an election there. And given the current climate, there's no telling Reform may win Manchester. So that would be an even bigger loss for Labour. So Starmer was faced with 2 bad choices, and ultimately he chose one. And both of them are a gamble, because if that Denton by-election now happens, because it has to happen.
Oh, it will happen, yeah.
Yeah, it has to happen. So when it happens, if Labour loses, people are going to say, you see, you left this seats for as in somebody who everybody knows would have won it without question. You prevented him from running because of your own selfish agenda. On the other hand, if he had said, okay, guy, run, and then they lose Manchester, people will still say the same thing. Why did you take such a risk? So it was he had 2 bad options. I think he took the less bad option. For the simple fact that the Labour Party still has a hefty majority in Parliament.
So what's one seat?
So that's the less bad option.
However, a
the optics.
13,000 majority, I think there's whichever way he cut it, sadly, he was never going to win. As in Keir Starmer, because if Labour,
that's why I say he had 2 bad options.
If Labour loses a 13K majority, my lord.
Exactly.
And then comes the May election, where everybody knows that because of the mood of the nation, it's going to be it's just going to bleed red everywhere. So he had, but the question was what was uppermost. However, people are then, if you listen to people and they're saying this could not have gone better for someone else who has said nothing so far, at least on this episode, and that is the health secretary, West Streeton. Because if Andy Burnham had gotten into parliament, his leadership agenda is dead on arrival. However, with
True
Andy
that.
Burnham now locked back in Greater Manchester, now free, as it were, to say even more of what he was saying. And as you can see, there's been, I think, as at the last count, there are like 50 Labour MPs who have written a letter to say they are not happy with the next decision. So it's
And
almost
I
like
think,
a civil
sorry,
war
sorry to
brewing.
cut you again. I think
Mm.
that's one place where Starmer kind of so in choosing what he felt was the less bad option, I think he kind of dropped the ball, because having Burnham in parliament would have subjected Burnham to the whip.
You see, I, I think the lesson in all this, if there's a lesson, and this is not me giving lessons on how to usurp a leader or if you want to usurp a leader, but there's something
Well, I
we've
have 4
learned.
lessons that I've written down.
But there's something we've learned in Nigeria, and I'm sure if you cast your mind back to every election hopeful, you will realize this is never put your head above the parapet.
It's a get
Because
bluff.
yeah, because by indicating very early, even especially when he was outside parliament, that he not only wanted to go back to parliament, but was going back because he wanted the top job. And the Bonham made sure that he put
Well,
not
to
just
be
one,
fair
but
to him, he
lots
didn't
of targets on
indicate by
his.
himself. Or
No, Chata. When
people
you listen,
indicated for him.
no. When you listen to a lot of his speeches, see again, is the thing with politics. Sometimes it's a nod, sometimes it's the wink. You know how again going back to when you say both of us are Igbo, there's that saying that a good child knows to differentiate between a normal look and a stare. So even though Andy Bonham may not have said my plan is to come back and become Labour leader, a lot of what he has been saying pointed that pointed to the fact that this man was. And then when people ask him, he never. I mean, look at there were pieces about him in the New Telegraph. He was on podcast. He was everywhere.
Which one is the New Telegraph? For
Sorry, the New Statesman. My goodness,
you are
because
bringing
we're talking
Nigerian
about Nigeria,
newspapers
and
here.
now I'm thinking Nigerian newspapers. The New Statesman. Anyway, so what are your
Anyway,
4 lessons so that we can do that and then go for a quick break?
yeah. So I think the 4 lessons are for people from that's Africans in the UK. The first one is that politicians everywhere treat the electorate as pawns. So think about it like this: Suella Braverman's constituents are feeling let down by the fact that she has moved over to reform without giving them the opportunity for a by-election to. And I think it's a miss on our part that we didn't even talk about that hypocrisy, because a few years ago, Nigel Farage was saying very loud that once a politician that defects, that there should be a by-election.
In fact,
Now he's
Nigel Farage said
preventing.
never trust a Tory. There's always
Yeah,
that.
so
So that is
so
making the
so you
round.
have that. Now, so we must learn one thing that I would give Westerners, not just Brits, is that at least historically they refuse to be taken for granted by a political class. It's something that we must internalize. We need to vote on issues, not on an ethnic or party loyalty. The second one is we need to learn how to build cross-community coalitions, because at the end of the day, we are so take both of us as an example. Back in Nigeria, because we're Igbo, we're one of the majority ethnic groups, but here we're minorities. There's a fragmentation that's happening, like I said, in British politics, and I think that it is important that we engage with all parties. One thing that has been problematic with our people is our people come here and immediately go for the Labour Party. There are other parties that align more with your values. Yes, I know that will make you raise your head. It is me that is talking. Because of the nature of what I do, I can't join a political party, but I would encourage our people to look, for example, at the Liberal Democrats. So for me, if I were to join a party right now, it's the Lib Dems I would join. The Greens are too far to the left for my taste. So now, secondly, or thirdly, we need to learn to demand accountability consistently.
Yeah.
Especially in this country that has stronger institutions than our own. Demand it consistently. So again, Braverman's defection is in her naked self-interest. Any people from our community who is listening, who is in Farham, is it Fareham or Farham, her constituency, should be able to see, to say that this woman is not working for the interest of Farham. Nigel Farage, as an example, is from Clacton, or represents Clacton, has not been there for up to a week since he became their member of parliament. He has spent more time in the United States than in Clacton. So that demand for accountability is very, very vital. So all of this comes into the fourth thing. There are lessons to be learned from home, which is why I keep saying that it is very important that we don't allow this country to enter what's one of the premier political scientists in the world will say, John Mearsheimer, we don't allow this country to enter the primrose path. Because once you enter the primrose path, coming out of it is very, very difficult.
And what is the primrose path?
Making stupid choices. So, for example, this defection, counter-defection, it actually ends up hollowing out democracy. When you have a situation where politicians are not doing things for the interests of the people they claim to represent, but nakedly for their own interests, it hollows out democracy. So what is happening in the UK is warning signs for British people. We should be able to tell our British friends, this thing that is happening in your country.
We've seen this movie before.
Don't let the UK become Farage's Britain, the way Nigeria is now a playground for Godfathers.
Well, that's I think I'll say powerful place to stop, go for a break and come back. But before we go for that break, Cheta, I can't believe you're telling people not to join me in Labour. I'll talk to the producer about this. See you.
I won't be surprised that she will cut out. In short, let's get.
Nah, she's not. She's way
now,
nicer.
now that I've said let's bet, she won't cut it out. so that I will lose money to you.
Welcome back to the Black Paper. My name is Ndukwe Onoha.
And I'm Cheta Wanze.
Well, Cheta, I think we had an interesting first part to this episode.
Okay, you didn't the first episode this time around.
I thought no, this is the first part of an episode. I think you ended on a very strong note, and I think it will only make sense that we continue from there and talk about Sudan, because you spoke directly to our communities, and I think going forward, we should just carry on that thread. Now, I know not everyone is adept in geopolitical politics like you, Cheta, but I doubt that people will know that before 2011, Sudan was the largest country in Africa. And
geographically, in terms of landmass, because Nigeria is the largest country in Africa.
Yes,
let's just get that out of the way.
By population, yeah. But
the
talk about Nigeria, and interestingly, there's similarities here. Before the split, there was a predominantly Muslim north
and a predominantly Christian/animist south. Yes, the difference between Sudan and Nigeria then, in my view, was that the waterways, the access to the sea, wasn't enough. That was the difference. Otherwise, the dynamics were generally the same.
Yes, and even the colonial, should I say the footprints of the colonial era divide and rule.
The broad footprints of the colonial era were generally the same. So essentially, and it was funny enough, interestingly enough, it was the British that caused the trouble in both places. The British caused a lot of trouble wherever they went and colonized but not settled. They left those places in a sort of mess, which is kind of coming back to bite them in the fact that.
Do you know the one thing? Sorry, do you know the one thing that surprised me in looking into this whole Sudan thing? Is that Egypt was also, well, should I say, a part or a partner in Britain's colonial enterprise in Sudan.
in Sudan. Yes. So
Oh my
it's
God,
so
that broke my heart.
no, it's again very different. So as of the time that the British started making inroads into what we now recognize as Egypt, it was under Ottoman control.
Mm,
So they didn't see themselves in the Sudan, and I think you want to go back and look at the etymology of the word Sudan. Sudan
mm,
means land of the blacks in Arabic, Bilal al Sudan. So the mindset of a lot of the Egyptians was that this was a reservoir for slaves.
mm,
Yeah, so it was that mindset. So you need to understand the mindset of the times.
mm. In fact,
Um, if the British hadn't, there's a reason why the border between Egypt and Sudan is literally a straight line.
somebody's ruler was working.
Yeah, it was the British who just basically cut it and saying, okay, we will leave. By the time the British chased away the Ottomans, they basically cut it and said, we'll leave you to govern yourselves in this part, but this part to the south, which is what became the Sudan before the split into Sudan and
Mm,
South Sudan,
mm.
we are going to administer that. Eventually, the British left in 56.
Yeah.
And well, the country has really known no peace after that.
And it's even interesting, which is why if you listen to people, they'll say, well, you know how we said the predominantly Muslim North, they'll say predominantly, some people will say predominantly Arab North. And
Yes.
it's where, but anyway, so as you said, yeah, British lives in 56, but and then since then, for 50 years there was fighting. They were just embroiled in tensions that just kept
It,
going on until I think what the
Bros, 56
comprehensive
was not
peace.
50 years ago. 56 was 70 years ago. They've been fighting in one form or the other for
Oh,
70 years.
no, no, no. So I was getting to the comprehensive. So they fought for 50 years before the comprehensive peace accord in 2005. So that's when again, what's his name? Omar al-Bashir decided, right, you know what, with the army, we're going to take over. And for 30 years, he had an iron grip on Sudan. For 30 years, he used the military and some militias, notably amongst which is the Janjaweed, which is interesting when you talk about this whole episode. We'll be talking about throwback to Nigeria because some some politician describes their opponent as Janjaweed in Nigeria. But anyway, so
Please, that particular politician is an ambassador now, just for
oh,
you
I need to
to
behave
know the
myself,
kind
don't
of
I?
yeah.
But
Let's not talk about badly behaved FFKs.
yeah,
Um,
but
the
the thing is, as we've seen, as hasn't maybe thank God for in a way Nigeria hasn't followed the script, but Sudan in
who said
2000 in terms of fighting. So yes, or maybe they haven't followed the script in terms of, or rather in terms of splitting between two entities. What we have is guerrilla warfare across different parts, and we still fighting ourselves. But anyway, look, we are
if
getting
we start
again into the
talking
weeds
about
of
this thing,
Nigeria.
we will. So let's not go there. But
All
let's just
right.
make it very clear: Nigeria is not at peace. Let's
Oh no
stop
no
there.
no no no
Go.
no
Okay.
no argument. But in 2011, South Sudan votes overwhelmingly to have
To
its own
leave.
country. Yeah, and Sudan, which will then, and this is now the argument, or this is why I have a huge argument when people say, well, countries should continue to divide, because dividing
Doesn't solve anything
doesn't
really.
solve anything. Because here you have a predominantly Muslim North now, or as they like to call themselves, Arab North, and they are called Sudan. But since then, they've been fighting, themselves. You have, as I said, Omar al-Bashir, who used his military, and who also used the Janjaweed to,
This is military and paramilitary.
to repress opposition. But then uh, popular protests happen in 2019. Omar is deposed. The military decides we've had a taste of this power too much. We're not going anywhere. They say rather than go anywhere, we're going to share power with the Janjaweed. And this lasts for a few years until 2015, 2023, when Khartoum goes up in flames, civil war, and
So that's not
lots of
a
people.
complete reading of.
Oh.
So what happened was that there was a popular protest that deposed Al Bashir,
Mhm.
correct? And the military so by as of this time, some legitimacy had been given to the Rapid Support Forces,
Mm,
which is what's used to be the Janjaweed.
mm,
So they, together with the military, realized. So they were the ones who were, especially the RSF, they were the ones who were going in to kill protesters when the protests were happening. But
mm,
the people refused to leave the streets. Eventually, both Al Burhan, who is the chief of the army chief, and Hemedti or Dagelo, who in his official name is his nickname is Hemedti. That's what everybody knows him as.
mm,
Realize that we can't kill everybody. So let us basically usher al-Bashir out. So a power sharing deal was reached where they were and this is where I think the protesters made the mistake. The
mm,
protesters should have insisted that those two guys, as well as their top chiefs, leave the scene as well. But they
mhm.
agreed to come into power. And I keep forgetting the name of the a very respected academic who was the de facto ruler of Sudan. But then over a very short time, but Al Burhan and Hemedti conspired to have this guy shoved out of the way, and they
Mm.
took power for themselves. But then these are two men who have very large egos, and neither of them could accept to
Each
be
other,
the
yeah,
number two
yeah.
to the other one. And that's the summary of how this whole um uh, uh
Civil war.
how this whole shit show came about. And now we have hundreds of thousands dead,
Mm,
millions displaced. The thing is affecting other countries, especially Chad and the Central African Republic, because they have so many refugees. And this neighborhood, so that line called the Sahel,
mm,
from basically which stretches across from the west to the east of the continent between the Sahara and Sub-Saharan Africa, is the world's worst neighborhood right now.
mm,
Chad and the Central African Republic are snap deep in the Sahel. So you have a situation where these are countries that are very poor, not able to take care of themselves, but they're now having to take in hundreds of thousands of people from Sudan. Sudan has essentially become like a vacuum,
mm,
which is sucking in and spitting out small arms and light weapons. And those small arms and light weapons are making their way into different places, such as northern Nigeria. So
mm.
you see how it affects. Now, another problem with Sudan is that it has become a theater for a proxy war. So the middle and great powers, or with the exception of, I think, with the exception of China, all the other middle and great powers are involved in Sudan one way or the other. So the UAE and Russia are on one side,
Mm.
Egypt and Saudi Arabia are on another side. The US is somewhere pretending to play diplomats, but I mean, Sudan is just not high on their priorities.
Mm.
So basically, the international community's response to Sudan has been very lethargic. It's a forgotten conflict. People are dying in large numbers, and it's just nowhere near the top of the news agenda.
Well, so now we're talking about this as well because I agree when you say because Sudan again when you look at the history of the West's intervention in some of these conflicts, you realize that if you have enough resources that they're interested in, suddenly they're there to help you establish yourselves. But to it for whatever um reason, maybe because as you said, there's also there's the war. This war contributes to migration and all of that. The UK seems to have been involved in one way or the other. There've been sanctions placed by the UK government on senior RSF commanders for violence against civilians, and this happened last year. And then even at the International Court of Justice, the UK has publicly supported investigations into war crimes. So those are some of the. They've said the nice things. Let me put it that way. They've said the
That
nice
thank you
things.
for adding that, because I was just looking at you.
Yeah, made the right noises. But the thing is, we have, I think there are about 35,000 ish people in the UK who are either Sudanese, first generation Sudanese, or um, or descendants of or second generation Sudanese, and for whom issues like this matter, for whom there's no luxury of saying, you know what, I want to hop on a plane and go to either Khartoum or Darfur or wherever, to go and see um, loved ones, and when we hear Ukraine, when we hear Greenland, when we hear Taiwan, and a few other places being mentioned non-stop, as if some of the greatest, and yes, those are devastating. We owe it to, to ourselves and to our Sudanese family to remind the world that there are conflicts happening there that also have direct impact on people here. And I mean, one of the most amazing people I know when it comes to trying to serve her community here in Derby is Sudanese, and I don't think she'll mind me mentioning, but when the few times she has spoken about home, you can you can hear that, just that sadness, because whilst being Nigerian, I can speak with and again, for Nigerians, depending on which part of Nigeria you come from, again, if you're from southern Kaduna or some part of Benue, you're probably not speaking about your homeland with as much joy and enthusiasm as someone who comes from Abia State, where there's relative peace, relative. But you can tell that there's that sadness, because for someone like her, she can always think of when there was a better time, when I didn't feel that there was no option. I can't go home to see either grandparents or distant relatives. So we do need to keep news like this on the front burner. So it's something to just keep talking about.
Yeah, true that you've spoken well. Just to point out that when you said 35,000, it's 35 to 40,000 Sudan-born people in the
So
UK,
that's like
not
first
second
generation.
generation. Yeah, and for me, that number includes you've of course the BBC the BBC journalist Zainab Badawi,
Mm.
and my favorite
Mm.
columnist in the Guardian newspaper, Nesrin Malik.
Yeah.
I love reading Nesrin Malik. They're both from Sudan. She
Yeah.
and Badawi. What is happening in Sudan is a tragedy of epic proportions. It's no longer just a country in civil war. For me, and one of the reasons why Sudan is important to watch is that it's yet another example of the breakdown of the post-colonial structure in on the continent of Africa.
Mm.
And the longer it persists, the more it will prove that international borders are becoming increasingly irrelevant to the movement of violence and instability. And that is something that we must watch, because as Nigerians, I can tell you, I'm not wishing our homeland bad, but if we continue our current trajectory, we are on the road to Khartoum.
Mm. Sad. Um, so Cheta, quickly, there's a last one. Yesterday, the Home Office, the question of a UK style FBI. Now,
I
I
have only
saw.
one thing to say. I don't want to dwell on this at all.
Mm,
The only thing I have to say is, from our again, is back to this thing that we talk
I think I
about,
know where you're
l-
going. Yeah.
learning from our experience in Nigeria.
Mm,
Centralizing the police is a bad idea. That's one. Number two, You want to talk giving excessive powers to the police and all of that. Look at ICE in America,
Mm.
and that's all I will say.
There's something else that, although when the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, when she said her plans for the police, there's going to be a new national police service which will handle the big issue crimes, so like terrorism and other stuff for the whole country, under which will sit a regional body, under which which will then sit local policing. So that's the way she plans it. But there will be one figure who will be in charge, who supervises this body. A few, for me, and I think, Cheta, you've put it so succinctly. It wasn't so much, thinking about it personally, it wasn't so much about, oh, what are the merits, what are the demerits of this, but it was, my goodness, we have seen this where we had the IG of police, but it wasn't just the one. There was a question of what happens when it is not labor in power, and you have someone who thinks remigration should be a key policy drive. And remigration, for those who don't know, is the idea that people are floating around that anyone who is not white British or white native, because it's not just in the UK, it's in Germany, people are talking about it in Germany and other parts of Europe, but anyone who is not a white native should be sent out of the country, despite, regardless of their settled status, regardless of their citizenship status. What happens when because we have, sadly, certain reform politicians playing around with that idea? If reform were to be in charge, and somebody like that was in charge of this new British FBI, would they then not be your new ICE? Kemi Badenoch
Again,
has said that she wants to do a British version of ICE, which is scary. But, carry on, Cheta, and then I'll just run
I mean,
through a few of the
if
thoughts that.
there's a British version of ICE, Kemi would be deported along with the rest of us. I mean, there's that Rupert Lowe, the former reform
From
guy
Where
who
is he now again?
is he in advance now? Is independent
No, I don't remember the name of. He's
of
what's his
his
name?
vehicle.
Yeah, his name of the guy, the other guy that is in advance, the former chair.
Anyway, he made a very interesting tweet 2 days ago
Hmm.
that bears repeating word for word. He said, "The majority of hate is imported through Gatwick and Heathrow, not
My
Dover.
my
Legal
lord.
migration is a bigger problem than illegal migration. Never forget that."
Uh-huh.
So the the thing about that is, when these people are claiming that they're going for, so let's put it like this: the politics of hate requires someone to always hate.
Mm,
It's a requirement. So when you centralize power too much, you actually give these people a weapon they will use in future.
mm.
And so what Shabana Mahmood is trying to do is a very, 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 very bad idea.
And look, I couldn't agree, because there were a few scary things in there. The other thing is the live facial recognition rollout. And to be fair to a lot of the members of parliament in the Commons yesterday, when she made this speech about her plans, a lot of them asked about the issue of racial undertones in policing, because they're like, look, you're going to have these live facial recognition go out. You're going to have uh, AI, which we'll come to again. What about those biases that are shown right now in in facial technology? How do you control that? And then there's also, she also mentioned that there's going to be police AI. which will be used to quicken or make the work of policing easier. And I thought that was quite interesting because in the last episode we spoke about the commissioner of police who was forced to resign because the police use AI. But here is a home secretary saying, "Look, we're going to invest more in AI for policing." So it's. But the bigger question is not even so much about the AI itself, although yes, that's a very huge question. But the question is who holds the data? Because I think those 2 episodes ago when we spoke about the UK and the EU not having their own tech ecosystem. So here again, both of us are going to be walking around. Everyone we know walking around the UK. There's facial recognition. There's this AI taking our data, storing it, but then transferring it to
To
the US
Palantir.
to pilot. Yeah, so it's a scary.
If you can say there's some small consolation, is that the AI models don't recognize black people very well. So the AI model will see you and think you are me.
But you see, that's the problem. Then, well, if that's the case, maybe I'll just go and commit a few crimes but that's the thing, because what you're going to do is misidentification. What you're going to then have possibly is, because as people are going to be trained to trust the AI, forget about hallucination. That means the word of the AI is law, because there was no human error. Because think about it, a lot of the times when accidents happen, you hear things like human error, and AI and machine learning, they're supposed to work to reduce as much human error as possible. But when this then becomes a norm and is the bedrock upon which society is policed, I don't know. I'll just say that I'm more concerned than sold on the use of technology in policing. Um, the other aspects of it, I'm sure things can be worked around in terms of regional policing and all that, but I'm concerned really about technology and how it will affect our communities.
Policing is more effective when it's local. End of story.
And it's that end of episode as well.
Yes.
See you at the next one.
See you at the next one.